Welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments, the best growth mindset podcast recognized by Million Podcasts and ranked as a top mindset podcast by FeedSpot. We're proud to be in the top 1% on Listen Notes. Join Dr. Alisa White as we explore powerful insights and strategies to elevate your mindset. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Mindset Mastery Moments, where we rewire thought patterns, ignite purpose, and remind you that innovation begins in the mind. In the last episode, we kicked off a groundbreaking conversation with Dr. John Bamforth and Dr. Zwahlen, co-authors of The Race to Innovation, Unleashing the Power of Entrepreneurship for Everyone. If you missed part one, you're going to want to go back because this second half picks up right where we left off, diving deep into ownership, legacy, and how diverse innovators are accelerating transformative change around the world. In this episode, we unpack what it really means to own your narrative, how diversity isn't just a value, it is proving driver of innovation. And we also close with two powerful personal stories about flipping the script in leadership and life. And of course, they give us their mindset bites to go, which is absolutely transformational as always. You're going to want to take notes on this one, and you're going to want to get conversation huddled around what we discuss in part two and in general, this amazing book, Unleashing the Power of Entrepreneurship for Everyone. Let's get back into it, and I'll see you on the inside. Yes, absolutely.
100%.
Exactly. And I just, that is just powerful. We're going to have another episode on that, just community building alone. Let's talk about ownership and legacy, because that's another recurring theme you drive home in the book. You make a bold statement that only ownership creates generational wealth. Whew, that was a hit harder for me. One of the ways I simply define leadership is ownership, right? But Dr. John, as someone who's led inside global corporations, why do you believe ownership, not employment, is a true lever of transformation? And listen, disruptors, wherever you are, lean in, because this is the very essence of why I breathe. What he's about to say. I don't know what he's going to say, but I can guess. The lesson he will teach.
No, I when I look at the examples that we use in the book, but more importantly, things that I see, the reality is part of the reason there are some of the extremes of wealth right now. We've had the gap between the rich and the poor is growing. When somebody, protect the innocent now, and say somebody demands $1 trillion pay package, there's something that, you kind of, that's one of those things where you take a step back and say, really? Somebody needs $1 trillion? But the reality is that, he's commanded ownership, and it's driven that's put him in situations that, are pretty unique. We spend a lot of time with venture capital and with private equity. And probably the most obvious thing to us when we did that is when we talk to people, they all, generally speaking, look like me. Right? I mean, the vast majority of people who are distributing the capital to grow that wealth look like old white guys and often give it to old white guys. And I can say that as an old white guy, right?
Right.
I think that has to change. I think we have to look at that lens in a very, very different way. And it's only by driving folks, I think about Lilly, a large proportion of the employee base had in some way, shape, or form participation in Lilly stock.
Yes.
And sometimes it wasn't vast, it wasn't a huge amount of stock, but it was still transformative. Lilly over the last 10 years as markets caps has grown tenfold. Well, you don't need that many shares as an administrative assistant or whoever it is for it to be transformative. When I was back in Lilly UK, we had an assistant who, because of one of the stock programs, paid off her mortgage at a relatively young age, right? Those are transformative things for folks. And particularly if you get people engaged in entrepreneurship, these are game-changing events often, not just for one generation, but for multiple generations. And we've got to educate all communities on that value.
Absolutely. And not gatekeep it, right? Dr. Roy, how does that connect to your point in the book about enabling ownership as a pathway to community advancement?
Yeah, I think where in my mind, forgive me, I'll wax a bit philosophical here and
No,
kind of and go
please.
full circle to where we
Yeah.
started. What's unique about America is, we often, one of the phrases we use is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And
Happiness.
we
Yeah.
talk a little bit about this in the book. Life and liberty, I think, with voting rights or other kinds of things, we've come a long way, but we've kind of debated what this pursuit of happiness actually means. For us, one of the things that just jumped out at us as you look back at the history with Locke and others is that there's actually a frame of ownership around the pursuit of
Mm,
happiness. This idea,
mm,
it started with owning your own labor, right? So that's entrepreneurship, owning the product of your labor.
yes.
And so I think it's something very American, regardless of what cultural background you have within the United States,
Mm-hmm.
that, part of this complete American dream is this ownership principle. It is this generational wealth, the
Yes.
byproduct of what John just talked about. And
Mm-hmm.
whether that you are an official entrepreneur with your own business or whether you're an administrative assistant that understands the value of owning
Of
Eli Lilly, right? Like, you don't
yes.
have to be an Elon Musk or own a corner store, right, to
Mm-hmm.
be entrepreneurial or to go after the pursuit of happiness in our
Mm-hmm.
frame ownership.
I
That
love
is
it.
fundamentally American, and it's something that should, again, differentiate us to the world.
And it does. Legally immigrated to the USA in 2005. So it's almost over 20. I've just hit 20 years in July. And, it was kind of a start over. But, standing there at almost age 25, I'd started my own business at 17. Things were going pretty good. But my family had a migration pattern for years. And so most everybody was already here. My sister had already immigrated here. And I was coming with since we were kids, we were coming here, but we again waited for the legal paperwork. And so I guess back in the 80s, when I was growing up, it was always about a better life coming to the USA, more opportunities. And I guess my parents thinking about, well, we have these girls and my brother wasn't born yet, that they're very smart and it will be more advantageous for them to be able to study overseas. And I remember the thought process back then was for us to study overseas, but then go back to Guyana, South America, small little country in South America, and build there and help to build, advance, innovate. In the US, a lot of us, that was the thought process. And then over time, it just became brain drain. We weren't going back. People weren't coming back. And so for me, I wasn't planning to go back. But for me, the world has always been my pawn. That was the mindset I was raised with and started my very first job as an entrepreneur. So I can't be anything else. When I look around, my grandparents, all of them, no matter what they did, had a path to entrepreneurship and community service going on, including my parents. So when we think about it, when coming from an immigrant's perspective, agreeing with you, Dr. Roy, is that once you approach it that way as a US, and that's when, even though in these tumultuous times with all the different changes and shifts and uproar and discussions and disagreements happening in the USA today, it is still what makes America great is the fact that we have an innate drive. And I say we, even though the individuals who even come here and stay here and want to build and grow here, is that once I'm here, I'm in a space, I'm in a world where I can actually own my time, my freedom, and build wealth and leave a legacy for generations to come. And I'm saying that, of course, with a sweeping way generalization. It's not that I don't know what happens everywhere else. I just know where I came from. I just know the millions of people that I've interacted with across the globe, both here and the ones who actually are here and the ones who are wanting to come here, why we stay here, why we come here. And we still believe at this moment, I still believe that at the core of it, that's what we're all seeking. And when I speak to individuals and groups, especially young people across the globe, especially in the continent of Africa, that's the breath I'm trying to breathe into them to create that for themselves where they're at. Because eventually, that's what that's the discourse right now. We want that. And I believe I see you both nod in your head is that you want that breath to be breathed into every soul on the planet. And then we find our way and come together in these spaces and places, shared vision and innovate, right? Not limiting the sphere of how we come together, where we come from, but allowing space for it and allowing innovation, which will really advance us as a race, as a human race on the planet altogether. If I'm getting that right. I see the nodding heads,
That's right.
right? So
Yes.
ownerships.
Well,
Go ahead, Doctor.
I'm so sorry. I'm just so excited about what you're saying. Innovation is not zero sum,
Come
right?
on.
We have to keep that. We talked about that in the book. We have to take that zero sum mindset out. This grows the pie, right? This isn't about dividing up existing resources.
Right.
This grows the pie. Whether you consider that an American export, right? These ideas as American exports, but it's this frame of we can find opportunity everywhere. We just need to look.
Yes, absolutely. Dr.
Yeah,
John.
we have a great example in the book of a town in Maine that had an influx of immigrants. That at first there was a significant resistance. This is a town in Maine that was in decline. When these folks came, I think from Somalia, Roy, right? I remember the story correctly.
That's what I'm hearing. Somalia and I think Uganda.
Yeah. And and they, the initial response from the city was resistance, right? It was the frame that we haven't got enough resources to embrace other folks, right? We just don't have enough for us. So how can we have enough for other people coming to the city?
Right.
And then all of a sudden, this group of individuals started to help rebirth the city. They started farming again. They started doing things within their community, but broaden it out to folks within the city. And all of a sudden, this city that had been in decline began to thrive. And you can think about that at a macro level for the country, right? So we all know that rural America is struggling right now. And if we embrace these types of ideas in places like Tulsa and others and other parts of the country, I think we will see some remarkable things.
We will. I agree. And that's the same thing I say to Africa. And I say that because if just a little bit of resources and the willingness and the mindset to come together and become the solution to the problems you already have and not necessarily think it's going to come from the sky or they're going to be toppers that drop aid, you're going to really solve some problems. I want to lean in a little bit to the concept of accelerating transformative change, one of the themes in the book. But hold on, let's talk about diverse innovators really quick. Something that struck me, you both say that diverse innovators have a unique lens. And I want us to just share what that is, because a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this podcast, a lot of people who desire to, they think, become entrepreneurs. I said, you're already an entrepreneur if you're thinking about entrepreneurship. The ability to see what others overlook is what you all say. Dr. Roy, can you give me an example of that in action, maybe from one of the innovators you interviewed?
Yeah, I mean, John mentioned one earlier. Rihanna is kind of the obvious one. And just to put a finer point on that, right? I think there was three foundation shades available to people. You launched a company that brought 40 different shades. And by the way, most of them were actually a lot of them were for white women too. So the foundations weren't good for white women, either. Which is kind of interesting to, and I think that piece, we often say unique lens that scales. And so oftentimes we can find from an entrepreneurship innovation perspective, small problems that sometimes require small solutions that aren't kind of businesses ultimately or investable startups in the same that can scale in a venture thesis. But there are a lot of opportunities, and that's just one of them. There's many other stories in the book. I'm trying to think of beyond that one, what really stands out to me. Go ahead.
Yeah, the one for me, Roy, which is a very personal story for us, is one of our contributing authors, Ashley, who was one of our colleagues. Ashley's story is, it's in the book, but Ashley came she was I always smile when I think about it. She was a backup candidate for a project management role, and we decided not to hire the lead candidate, and she came in for an interview, and I remember her telling her story, and I asked her one question, and as soon as she answered the question, I'm like, okay, I want you on the team.
Wow.
So she described a story of, and this experience changed the trajectory of her entire life. So she went to, remind me, Roy, the
Spelman.
school in
Yes,
Spelman. She went to Spelman,
Mhm.
and then her grandparents got sick, and she believed they were on a path. They didn't have long. So she gave up school, went off to South Carolina, and I think she thought she was going to be caring for them basically in terminal illness. When she got there, she realized that they were living in a food desert and they essentially weren't getting great nutrition. And she also, they lived on a farm, and she started to grow vegetables and started to feed them healthy foods. And over a period of time, she completely changed the trajectory both of them were on. She got them both back to good health. And that lens that she had from that experience created a passion for her to become an expert in gardening. She's published. She's published her first book before she published with us. And she's been, I think, on the front page of Home and Garden, a whole bunch of different things. She, in the interview, she said, "Oh yeah, I've got this online presence as well. I'm the Mocha Gardener. I've got 1 million followers." I'm like,
Whoa.
"What? Say that again?" And we over time, we encouraged her to keep pursuing this passion. She went off to do a master's degree in this arena. We helped her with a startup company that she's working on right now, and she's just come back to Carolina to pursue a PhD as well, alongside building this business, which is basically she identified that hospital systems, 40% of their employees are food insecure. So think about that for a minute. 40% of their own employees. So the company that so she's building, many of them have their own hospital gardens. So she's building basically a company that will provide a new offering to employees, so a new benefit of food supplies to their own employees. Again, a unique lens on a problem, and hence I think a unique business that hopefully she'll build.
That is amazing. I'm inspired. I'm definitely going to look her up too. Wow, we should have her on the podcast. Just you guys let her know we want to talk.
Yeah, the Mocha Gardener. Go look for the Mocha Gardener.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Yeah. So let's talk about the accelerating transformative change. Now, one of your final principles that you talk about in the book, you both talk about it: timing, getting the right support, mentorship, Lord have mercy, and fuel at the right moment. Can't say this enough. This is one of the hugest things that I think a lot of people miss in the journey of entrepreneurship as well. Dr. John, what does acceleration look like in a practical sense?
Well, I'll give you an example when we were talking to private equity and to venture capitalists. I mentioned earlier, most of them look like me.
Right.
And we were talking to somebody who is a really, really good guy, a lead partner at a major private equity firm, and often will put diverse talent onto his boards, et cetera, et cetera. When we asked him, though, how long is this going to take, right, to make these transformational changes and help companies look very, very different in terms of the type of talent that they have? He said, this is probably generational, John. It's going to take generations for this to change. And then almost a week later, we interviewed another guy who is in the book, who lives in Nashville, Marcus Whitney. And he, when George Floyd occurred, when everything happened around George Floyd, he challenged all the healthcare leaders in Nashville that they weren't doing enough as a group. And one of the things that Marcus did is he set up a venture fund to fund Black-led businesses.
Wow.
And while my friend in private equity was saying this is going to take a long time, Marcus went out, set up a VC. And when we interviewed him, he said, I don't have a problem with deal flow. I have a problem with enough capital to fund all the companies that are possible. But I don't have a problem finding deal flow of talent that are starting, Black-led businesses. And so the reality is you can say, oh, it's going to take a long time. Our view is no, the opportunity is
now.
Right now.
Yeah.
It's now, and we can't wait.
Yes.
That's the opportunity for the country, is the opportunities now. I mean, China will pass us by. if we don't move. And so the opportunity is now.
When it really ties in that enclave point that we were talking about earlier, right? Part of what was driving that is it's our own networks, right? So if John and my networks look like John and me, right, then we aren't going to see. We're just going to assume, well, there are no opportunities over there because I can't
Right.
find them. But if my networks all look like us, then of course it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Versus, do we
Right.
actually think about how we're engaging in these communities and partnering with them, and with the principles of this book, trying to give people tools to do that, to
Yes.
actually find value in others rather than just be skeptical of others.
Mm-hmm.
That, we think, to the point that John just made so well, there's lots of opportunity out there, and we just have to understand how to find it. And quite frankly, that is the central thesis of every investment, right? Is hidden value,
Exactly.
that
Hidden
puts you at a
value.
competitive advantage. Right. And why is this any different? Why is just that the
Exactly.
tools and the approaches and principles are different. So we have to
Mm-hmm.
understand the how, the opportunities there, and we just need to go find
I agree. And I am thinking Dr. John said so many times, and he's absolutely right. A lot of the investors and individuals look like him, but I don't know if they realize how much more money they can make if they were
Mhm.
diversifying in a strategic way across
Yeah.
various. Because here, one of the things we say in my little core community is money doesn't discriminate, right? When we make products, we wanted to sell across every. I mean, I personally, I guess most entrepreneurs probably think that way. I guess I'm just a bit biased. That if let's say I'm manufacturing orange juice, I want my orange juice to be everywhere, in every corner, in every continent, in every store, because I want to make as much money as I can. And personally, for me, I want to see every person that works in our organization build generational wealth and develop their own product and thing. And over time, graduate from working for me and then the next young person and just grow. That's my personal vision. So I'm like, dude, what are you doing? There's some people over and there's some entrepreneurs that I've met, some venture capitalists that I've met, not just entrepreneurs, that have taken themselves to Africa underground, and people don't even know how much money they have. And they have allowed themselves to get among youths and universities who are innovating things, and they're investing money. They're bringing what they've done, though, is brings us, I've been, have had a little bit of a front row seat to see that they brought them back to Silicon Valley, which is pretty smart, right? To bring their innovation here and sort of develop it more because it wouldn't be able to do it. But that's the kind of wisdom I'm talking about. Like, it doesn't matter what, you can't lose. And you figure out where to invest and diversify the investment just like you would on the stock market, right? So let's talk about, we're coming down to the end here. Like, it's went by very, very quickly. And I have to say this is my very first interview in 2 years of the podcast and almost 2 years of interviewing guests where I've had two at the same time. So you all are the first of a first, first of a lane. And I don't often do it, but you all made it so very easy to do. But let me ask you this really quick before we wrap this segment, Dr. Roy. What needs to shift in the funding or the ecosystem side to make that acceleration possible for diverse founders?
Yeah, I think, well, I'll start with perspective, just building off of what you just said. I think, again, when
Mm-hmm.
we're in a solely a justice frame, we sometimes make the mistake of, as I say, like, how do we sell more Nikes into the Black community versus what innovations are in the Black community that could scale to other communities. So
Right.
I think we need a business lens around this.
Exactly.
Back to John's
Exactly.
point about Eli Lilly, I don't think we have, I mean, justice, of course, is important, and we want to, and equity and all these other principles, but we have to start with that mind shift that there is value, right? There's value here.
Mm-hmm.
And if we start with that
Mm-hmm.
perspective, then everything follows quite quickly, right? We have to be strategic, of
Yeah.
course. We have to be thinking about how do we enter these marketplaces? How do we unlock value in unique ways? And it's going to be different than what we've experienced before. I think maybe I'll just kind of lean in also to the first part of your question.
Mm-hmm.
While John and I may look alike, we are very different people.
Exactly. And very different
With
perspectives,
different
just even having this
backgrounds.
conversation.
That's
Yeah.
right. So, and we have different, political persuasions. We have a lot of different things
Mm-hmm.
about us. But I so enjoyed writing it with John because he and I had a similar frame of, no,
Go.
I
Yes.
actually want to hear what you say because you're different, and not just for, oh yeah, it's nice to hear different viewpoints because that makes me a better person. it's wow, like maybe I could add some value to John, and John hopefully was thinking, yeah, maybe Roy can add some value to me, and that,
Yes.
and then also our contributing authors is the same thing. Like, hey, like we want perspectives from the community. We want, is this is what we're seeing? Is this right? Like, what are your thoughts? And getting back to that community frame where
Yes.
it's not just community to build community to kind of help us feel less lonely. That's the COVID frame.
Right?
It's the enrich each other's lives, both
Right.
in socially, but also economically. And the more we understand that, I think the easier this gets. John, feel free to disagree with me, which is what we
Jump
like to
in
say to
there,
each other all
Dr.
the
John. Yeah, jump in.
No, this book was built by a team of folks who conceptually believed in this idea at the highest level. We did not know where the book, when we were building this thing, and this thing took, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years to come to fruition, finally be in print.
Yeah.
And it went a bunch of different directions because all 5 of us that were engaged in it were playing with ideas and looking at the data and saying, what does this tell us, right? What does this really tell us? And we would argue about it, right? I'm not sure that really, is that what it really said? And that's what diverse talent does if they're genuinely listening to each other and are genuinely curious about the person that's sitting opposite, right? And I think that's why for me, this idea of believing that somebody's sitting in front of you, that interview with Ashley back in the day, Ashley Thomas, when you ask that question around, tell me about, that formative moment for you that you've had in your life so far. And she tells a story about saving her grandparents' lives. And when she told that story, I was like, wow, okay, you're a great human being. And because you're a great human being, I want you on my team because I think you're going to add a massive amount of value.
Come on.
Right?
Yes.
If that's your lens, she has a nickname, the Proton. She calls herself Proton because she brings positivity to every time she's in the room.
I love that.
And that positivity is incredibly valuable when you're trying to run a project, build a company, create an environment, create engagement on a team.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's why that lens for me of, each person being unique, but assume potential. Assume this person can do really good things. You just don't know what it's going to look like, right? Because they're going to take a unique path, a unique lens on it. But that assume potential piece is super important because it's hard to do sometimes. If that person sitting in front of you comes from a completely different background, doesn't look like you at all, doesn't come from where you came from. But if you assume potential, if you assume there is a richness there in that individual, that's incredibly powerful.
That is a mic drop. You all wrapped that so well. I'm walking away, and I guess it ties very well with my word where I say get curious. I like how you put it. Just assume, and again, that's that positivity. It helps. I tell people, they say, "Are you a glass half full or a glass empty?" I said, "Pick one." I don't know. You have it. I don't even have glasses. I do titanium. So let's start there. So I don't fit in any box. Basically, I'm just rolling. I become and I adapt because my goal is to be like water. So let's do one of my favorite segments in this podcast. It's going to be fun to see how this goes. Both of you have had such a global, diverse journey. So this is my favorite part. As I said, flip the script. I'd love to hear from each of you about a time. It could be humorous. It could be professional. It could be anything. It could be along the journey with the book. When you had to flip your own mindset, maybe a moment when your perspective was challenged, or you had to reframe how you viewed innovation, inclusion, leadership, and entrepreneurship altogether. We'll go with Dr. Roy first.
All right. Great question. I'm trying to think of there's a couple of things that come to mind. Probably the one that comes strongest was actually a few things in the middle of kind of George Floyd and the kind of the reckoning, politically more conservative by background. And, of course, words like DEI often automatically equal quotas. And so I was probably I was not the neutron, I was not the proton. So to follow that analogy, and but we were committed to, I was equally committed on the team to improving environment. It wasn't just a walk away moment. It's like, no, there's something here. I want to go deeper, as you said earlier, Dr. Lissa. I want to
Mm-hmm.
understand better. And actually, it was the same person, Ashley Thomas, who John mentioned, like, because we kind of lived in the world of like, hey, color blindness, not color blindness, what's going on. And we were talking back and forth about this. And I finally said, Ashley, like, do you want me to see your blackness? Like, is that like, I don't mean that in a negative way. Like,
Yeah.
do you like, is that like, do you, and she's like, yes, that's what I've been trying to say. She said, I value my blackness and I want you to value that too.
Yes.
I'm like, that's what I've
Yes.
been looking for. Right. That's what
Yes.
I've been personally looking for, is to value that as part of who she is. And that's something that's valuable, right? That,
Right.
in a country where that is a liability historically,
Right.
right?
We
If you
just
think
kind of, they
about,
want you to glaze over it. And I don't know who they are, but
yeah,
that's just a message. Yeah.
that's right. Right. And that for me, in this frame of in connecting that to innovation, to entrepreneurship, where we talk in the language of
Mhm.
value rather than the language of justice, that for me just flipped the frame entirely. I'm like,
That's
oh, okay. Now I'm looking at,
yes.
Tulsa and Wilmington a completely different way. Now I'm looking at
Yes.
talent in a completely different way. Now I'm thinking about my interaction, instead of starting with, hey, you don't speak or think like me. I'm going to assume all the barriers, to John's point. Now
Right.
I'm assuming potential, right? Of, yes, there's going to be barriers. Of course, there's going to be barriers. There's barriers to people that look and sound like me too. But what's the
Mm-hmm.
potential? And I think that, and then finally that put it through like, wow, everybody's talking about it from a justice lens. Nobody's talking about it from a value lens.
Value.
We're missing out on real value. Things are being
Right.
left on the factory floor that,
Yes.
and there's so much potential here that, there's an investment thesis here, right? This isn't just a nice thing to do.
To do exactly, or a required thing. Like that just never was cool. Dr. John, what was your moment when your perspective had been challenged and you had to reframe your view on innovation, inclusion, leadership, entrepreneurship, or just life in general?
Well, yeah, probably. So you have this experience, Alyssa. Coming to the US as a Brit.
Mm-hmm.
Working in a corporate center in good old Midwest Indianapolis. I took a role running as chief marketing officer for the US business, which is a strange thing to put a Brit into, right? Running a US marketing organization. And I remember meeting two young ladies on the marketing team who actually eventually became quite good friends. There's two parts to the story. This is because I ended up coming back to them for help, and there's a reason. So both African American, and they introduced themselves to me, and they told me their names. And the next day, I saw both. They worked on the same team. I saw both of them, and I got their names the wrong way around.
Man, you
And
know
they,
how that goes.
yes, with big smiles on their face, they both said, "Oh, us black girls all look the same,
Yeah,
right?" I'm like, no,
trust
I
me,
just
I get
got
it
your
all the
names
time.
wrong.
They do it to me all the time.
I just got your names wrong. It wasn't based on
That wasn't based on your race.
Fast forward.
Believe it or not, I've had black African Americans say it to me the exact same way. We all don't look the same. I'm like, how many times do people think I'm you? Just stop.
So fast forward about a month.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have an annual African American forum,
Mm-hmm.
all day forum, which was great. And they invited me to be on it. The team that ran it invited me to be on a panel, right?
Uh-huh.
So I go on this panel, and of course, maybe the first time in my life, I am the only white person of the four panelists, and virtually the entire audience is black, right?
Oh wow.
And so I'm all of a sudden I'm having that real life walk in the shoes moment where I'm like,
Oh my God,
I'm the minority in the room.
and you're gonna have to
right?
tiptoe around everything you say or even think for a minute, because I feel that pressure sometimes.
So this lady stands up in the audience and says, "Okay, Bamforth, you just got your new job as chief marketing officers. We got issues in the US business that you're going to fix. What are you going to do about it? Do you have a plan?"
Nice.
Of course, I've been in the job about a month, and I did not have a plan.
No, you're just not even figuring out what this is altogether.
So I'm like, I'm like sweating. I'm relatively new to the US, so I don't really know my knowledge of the history is limited.
Very limited. Yeah, even I.
Enough to be dangerous, but pretty limited. So surprise, I go back to my friends, Rebecca and Nolita, who I still remember very well. And I said to the both of them, I'm like, guys, and this is at the meeting. There was a break immediately after this panel meeting. I'm like, I need your help. We need a plan. because I've just been challenged on this idea of a plan,
Yeah,
and I
gotta
need
get back in
you
there with
two
one.
to help me.
Yes.
So, and they, to be fair to them, they were great.
Mm.
Sure enough, within a relatively short period of time, we had a transformation plan, and over time, it was great. That was one of those, that panel in particular. That's probably now, I don't know, 15 years ago. And I remember how I felt, and it was that it was one of those moments where you like, I now know. I've got many friends in the African American community. I now know
Yeah.
what it feels like to go to work every day and be the only black face on the team or the only black face in the room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just for a minute.
Yeah.
Just for a minute.
Yeah.
I only had it for a minute. Right.
Yeah.
But it was actually incredibly valuable to go through that experience.
Right.
And just to say, hey, that's what it feels like, dude.
Right. And I think more and more of us should put ourselves in those positions. Like I've been the only woman in the room. And then I was the only woman of color in the room. Or maybe, and I've been in situations where I'm with all women of color, but I'm the only immigrant in the room. All this is why I tell people diversity breaks up, and it affects all of us, whether we know it or not.
Yep.
Like Roy, I don't want to just saying Roy could be the only Jew in a room that's a Jew conservative in a room with Jews, things like that. And there's the diversity and perspective. And so I always want people to really, I hope that our listeners and viewers, if you don't catch all the other amazing things that these gentlemen have brought to the table, is open up your eyes and see the difference. And that there's no end. Differences just spike. I mean, I have siblings. I have a brother and a sister. My sister's 2 years younger than me, and my brother's 10 years younger than me, 8 years younger than my sister. And we both were raised in the same home. And as adults having conversation, we wonder if we're talking about the same situations that we were all present for, right? 20 years later, our perspective is so diverse. And I like to use the word diverse. And we have to literally do what you would do in almost any situation when there's a diverse set of opinions, ideals, perspectives, is really just listen to each other and acknowledge the experience. And for me personally, learn from what their experience of that situation is and see how I can expand my thought, my learning and growth and do something maybe different, or just have a good laugh. Sometimes it's just a laugh. Sometimes it's just for joy. Sometimes it's for tears, whatever that looks like. So I have to say thank you both so much for bringing this book. I can definitely see me sending an email saying, is it okay if my team and I mastermind on this and give our reviews? Because I believe this book needs to be examined further. It needs to go the distance that it was created for. Absolute masterpiece. So as we wrap up, we do something Mindset Bites to go. And it was like, should I do it or should I not? So what we're going to do is have both of you take 90 seconds where it's just you and the microphone. And then the two of us are going to step away, and you will speak to our listeners and viewers and the world, as this message will be here as long as time would allow forever. If you had your last 90 seconds to say something to the world, what would it be? We will start with you, Dr. Roy, and then Dr. John and I are going to step away from the microphone. Here we go. It's going to be you. Let me do my little tech thing and move us out into backstage. Here we go. So I am going to, there we go. If I can get it right. And I just moved him and brought him back. Let me hide myself.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time. I think that in a world that is challenging, we need to stay focused on opportunity. It's very easy in today's world to see what we lack, to see the barriers, to see the injustices, to see all those things that might trouble us from day to day, to just survive as a human race, as we've talked about. But innovation is always about potential, right? Entrepreneurship is building towards that potential. And what I've loved about this journey in writing the book with my co-authors is the opportunity to understand that journey is enabled, empowered, magnified, enriched by those all around us. And that is what I think helps us better face those barriers, those challenges, because it's innovation, right? That's going to help us get to that next solution. And it's entrepreneurship that's going to help us build those solutions together. And it is so much easier in life to just stick with people that look and sound and think like you. But I've learned in my time here that it is the difference that is the magic, and that it is people that do think differently than you, maybe work differently than you, maybe approach problems in new ways that can really add value to your life and provide the opportunity for you to add value to theirs. And that, of course, radiates out into our communities, however we might define those, our enclaves, as we've talked about today, and really learning how to bridge between those enclaves to create value, whether that's companies and products and services, or it's simply just making the world a bit better around us, whether that's in our homes, in our communities, or our countries, or across the world. And so I encourage you to assume potential, to think about how the power of enclaves, to think about ownership and how you can enable that in others so that you can partner with them in the right ways, to find those unique lenses that scale, and of course, to accelerate transformative change. We don't have to wait generations for the change that we seek. We can start building that together. Thank you again for your time.
So powerful, Dr. Roy. We're going to bring Dr. John to front, and we will step behind now.
So thank you again for listening to Roy and I talk about our book, A Race to Innovation. I hope you get a chance to read it. I close by just saying, Roy mentioned many dimensions about the book, but we're at a unique moment in time. It feels like there are a lot of extremes, particularly here in the US politically. We're in the moment of a shutdown where people can't seem to agree, can't seem to find compromise. And I think the reality is right now, the vast majorities are still in the middle, wondering how we got to the situation that we're in. The reality is there's a lot more good in the world than there is the extremes that we see on a daily basis in the news, etc. So we hope that the book and the dialogue we've had today represents what the majority of us would like to see. Roy mentioned the pursuit of happiness, and the reality is the concepts that we present in the book and that we talk about on a daily basis, and when we work together at Chapel Hill, is there is a wealth of opportunity if we start to embrace people who don't necessarily think like us. And as Roy mentioned, Roy and I come from quite different backgrounds. We come from quite different political backgrounds, I think. But I think what we've managed to do in the book is come together with a group of folks that thinks very similarly, that we think there's an opportunity for the US to do some very different things. So we hope that the book begins a dialogue that takes us to a better place, to a point where we can agree to disagree on certain things, but we get to a place where we all win together. This is not a zero-sum game. This is something where success will float everybody's boat. So in conclusion, thank you for the time. Thank you for listening. And I hope people go out there and embrace innovation, embrace the concepts in the book, and create great companies that can fuel the future of the United States. So thanks.
Okay, here I am. Did I bring us all back? Here we are. It's so powerful. Thank you so much. They shouldn't leave me alone to sum up the things that I do, because I get so excited and I go to click and I get happy. Well, listen, it's definitely been such a masterclass itself of innovation for everyone, and what it means, what opportunity is for everyone, what it starts, what it believes, what ownership, access. Dr. John and Dr. Roy, if you both would tell us your favorite way to connect with you as individuals, and then, of course, the book, so we can use this as the blueprint that it is.
Yeah, I could go first. So personally, obviously, LinkedIn is the best way to connect and reach with me. But our book, you can find at all the major online stores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, etc. And it's racetoinnovation.net. Net is the key there to get to our website, where you can find a lot more information about the book.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, everything that Roy said, and you can find me on LinkedIn. I've pretty good presence on there, and I'm pretty good at responding to people on LinkedIn. So connect on LinkedIn, and happy to dialogue about any subject, this book or any of the work that we do within the innovation space. So it's been great to talk to you, Alisa. We've really enjoyed it.
Thank you all so much, Dr. Roy, Dr. John. What a powerful conversation. Race to Innovation isn't just a book. It's definitely a blueprint. It's proof just from you both sharing your own journeys. When we open doors for more voices, we unlock ideas to change the world. The book has been out. It's officially published by Ideas Press Publishing, and you can Get your copy wherever books are sold. The links are in the description wherever you're listening or watching this episode. Also, the LinkedIn profiles for both Dr. Zwahlen and Dr. Bamforth are in there too. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me and for doing the work that ensures innovation truly belongs to everyone. And that is the most beautiful thing I've heard this year. And I'm really relishing in it. I will have a nice moment of reflection here as I sit and soak this up. Can't wait for the everyone to hear it. I get to hear it first. It's always a blessing. Thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to having you all back at a later date so we can dive a little bit more into some topics as it relates to entrepreneurship and innovation again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alisa. It's been great.
Thank you. And you all have a good one. Disruptors, remember, keep mastering your mindset. Think, speak, do become, keep innovating, keep winning, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye. Woo, what a finale. That's how you race to innovation. I just want to say a huge thank you to Dr. John Bamforth and Dr. Roy Zwahlen for bringing such clarity, courage, and conviction to this dialogue. Their book, Race to Innovation, Unleashing the Power of Entrepreneurship for Everyone, is available wherever books are sold. And trust me, it's one of the most important reads of this year. Innovation doesn't belong to one group. It belongs to all of us. And when we open doors for more people to lead, build, and create, we don't just make progress, we make history. If this episode moved you, share it with someone who's building and leave us a comment wherever you're watching or listening to this. Because we're building something bigger than ourselves. I invite you to subscribe, leave us a review, and stream our episodes. And you can find more information if you're wanting to be a guest, you want to add value at mindsetmasterymoments.com. I'm Dr. Alisa, your #1 mindset disruptor, reminding you to keep mastering your mindset. Think, speak, do become, and we'll see you on the next episode of Mindset Mastery Moments. Bye now.